Sociale. I'm chair of the Department of Architecture and Urban Design. And welcome to our department, or shall I say, welcome back to our department. Actually, I was a little bit worried that we had so much fun at the reception, so that I had no idea when we should say, let's start the lecture. But I'm sure actually you had lots of pre-interaction before this great lecture was started. It was a student idea actually to have this pre-reception. We never did this before. They were saying that it's not fair, always the faculty and the lecturers, friends talking and to each other, and we never had a chance. So this was set for students to interact with speaker and also the alumni and their guests. So I do really appreciate that many of you actually attended to this lecture event. Distinguished Alumni lecture was started about 5 years ago to honor our distinguished alumni and also to create the kind of opportunity for our students to interact with these distinguished alumni and a group of alumni. And because we do believe that that really creates the foundation of the department and also creates lots of sort of hope among the students. And please, fear, yes, but all the hope comes out from fear. So I'm so glad that it's been going on and it's quite being successful. So I'd like to again welcome all of you coming back to our department. Today we have another distinguished alumni, Fred Fisher, who introduced today's speaker. And I don't have to actually introduce Fred, but he's a renowned architect and also a very much distinguished alumni from our department. So please welcome Fred.
Thank you, Toshi. It's my greatest pleasure is that I'm not talking tonight. So all the stress is on you. It is a real pleasure to be here, and you are in for a treat. Pamela is one of the best landscape architects around, period. And I've had the great pleasure of being a classmate of hers back a few years ago here. And it's really nice to see Tim Breland and Tom Hines and some of the wonderful faculty members who really made us who we are. And I wandered up the stairs, couldn't help but take a peek at the studio, and saw a poster that I designed in 1984 for a lecture series, and it was in 1982. But what Pamela said, keep it brief, so I will. And you can get all the facts and figures in the book, the beautiful, marvelous book of Pamela's work. I just want to talk about a couple things that I think about when I think about Pamela and work with Pamela. And I feel very much akin to her and her outlook on design and architecture in the world. And a few things that most resonate with me are, one, the notion of genius loci, the embrace and the character of the place. And Pamela is of this place, and she knows it. She knows the plants like they're friends. And she knows the names of plants and their characteristics like they're friends. And larger ecological patterns. I learned so much about California from Pamela. Secondly, California has its own brand of modernism, and Pamela embraced that and learned about it, and the kind of landscape that distinguished California modernism from that practiced anywhere else. And in particular, because of our marvelous climate, the true embrace and integration of indoor and outdoor space. And that connects to one of the next things is Japan. And Pamela's time study and found knowledge of the Japanese view of landscape and nature. And our friend Leonard Cohen, who was a classmate, and wrote a book called Wabi Sabi, which is a Japanese philosophical aesthetic concept, which is very important to Pamela's work, to my own, and it should be to yours too. And then there's the focus on art. Pamela and her husband Richard have always been of the art world. Richard is a historian and teacher in art, and Pamela worked with artists such as Michael Heiser and others, who was at Ace Gallery, which introduced a lot of us to contemporary art, to minimalist art, to environmental art, to light space art, and the effect of looking through the eyes of artists at the world is I think one of Pamela's great strengths. It's one of the things which my work is most resonates between us, and that connection to the art world, the people, and that ecology. And finally, there's the notion of storytelling and narrative. And Pamela takes you through a place, she tells you a story, she takes you on a journey, and allows you to find your own journey. And I think one of the other connections we have back to that era is Charles Moore's and Bill Mitchell's Poetics of Gardens. And actually, I think one of the most memorable courses I took was Bill Mitchell's course on gardens. He was an architect, but so much about gardens. So finally, in the words of one of our professors back then, who paraphrased, and this is what Pamela does better than anyone, when all else fails, make it look good, or in Pamela's case, make it look beautiful.
There we go. That's okay. That's great. Thank you so much, Fred. Well, I don't know what to say, except that it sure is strange being in a room that was once the library. Thank you, Sylvia, I guess, for putting up all of this felt around and giving us good acoustics. And where did all the books go? Next door. Good. It's an honor for me to give this lecture at UCLA, to come back to UCLA, where I spent many years as not only a graduate student, but also as an undergraduate student. And I think that what's so amazing is how much bigger all the trees are. And as tonight, as we were walking through from parking structure 3 down here to the architecture building, I was looking at the David Smith sculpture in the garden. I went, my goodness, that thing looks like a miniature model. But it's because all the Pinus canariensis, all the trees have just grown up around it. And so that's reality. You know, we all change. The landscape is always changing. And we're always changing. But the architecture is durable and lasts. So I think that with that little introduction, and also with Fred's introduction, thank you very much for introducing people to my love of Japan, having gone there by myself when I was 22 years old to go to Expo in Osaka by myself. And of course, I was always riding motorcycles, so I got my own motorcycle. I rented a motorcycle in Japan, and I had to learn how to drive on the wrong side of the road. But I ran around, and I just visited. I had my red scarf behind me, and I had all, you know, I just visited all the temples. And that's where I was really inspired about landscape. And when I came back, I knew that in order for me to know about landscape, I needed to understand architecture. And so I was probably in the second or third class going through the program here at UCLA. Back at the beginning when, you know, it was so vibrant and young, and there was so many different faculty members, and it was just a very exciting place. And so I think that one of the things that I've learned since being in school more than anything of all is that there has to be a big idea that motivates and informs the design of a place, a landscape, and a garden. You need to have a big idea. And without that, forget it. So I don't care what the big idea is. It could be a story, it could be a narrative, it could come from a dream. That's a wonderful resource. If you're not keeping a journal of your dreams, you should. Because you have to have dreams to have them come true. In this lecture tonight, I'm going to focus. I'm going to focus on really one project, but it's our big project in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. It's 20 acres on the Pinheiros River, and I'll get into that in a bit. But I'm also going to show how other projects, one other project in Brazil, 9 acres that we completed 3 years ago, and then 3 other projects here in Los Angeles. So it's going to be a lot of slides, and believe me, you'll be out of here in 45 minutes. I thought I brought my clock with me, but I'll have to get my iPhone. Okay, so it's 7 o'clock, 6:51. Okay, so let's see if I'm right. Yeah. So I was talking about Okay. So this is how I came up with tonight's topic. All right. Our family goes to Mexico every Christmas. Okay. And so our son and our daughter are there with us, our grandchildren and fiancés and the whole business. And so we're sitting there at breakfast, and Mika goes, "Well, how are you doing, Mom? What are you working on?" And I said, "Oh my God, I'm going to give this talk." I'm this distinguished alumni. What the hell does that mean? And what am I going to talk about? So he says, "Well, listen, Mom, you want to give a good talk, don't you?" And I go, "Yeah." He says, "You don't want to give a bad one, do you?" "No." He says, "Well, let me tell you about a good talk." Because he's studying chemical biology up at UCSF and getting his PhD, and he says, "We hear all these Nobel laureates come by here, and some of them are just so boring. They just talk about this and that, they're not really telling you what they're doing." He says the good talks, this is what they're about. They will come there with some kind of a topic that they're working on, and they don't have the answer. They don't have it figured out. They're saying, here's what we're currently working on, and this is how we're trying to deal with these issues. I mean, what are you going to do? And this happened, and that happened, and so it's really more of a saga of being in the trenches in World War I and trying to get that 2 inches past. I mean, we're all watching Downton Abbey, right? So it's really like being in the trenches. And so that's what I'm going to do tonight, is to focus on our project in Brazil. But before I do that, I have a little bit of an introduction where I'm showing you here. On your left is an image of graphite on paper, and it's a drawing by Via Selmans. And the image is from Tokukuji, which is a Zen garden in Kyoto. And also, that's the image that you see there on the left, and then Via Selmans graphite on paper about water. Both of these images represent water. And I've always been influenced by the work of artists, and these works show how with a minimum of means, one can make a very powerful statement. In one of my first landscape projects that I did for 2 artists who were living in Venice in their studio, I cut 2 squares out of a concrete slab to create contrasting gardens of a desert and oasis. This is another example of minimum intervention for maximum effect. And so then, over the years, this is a residential project in Broad Beach, I've learned so much from this residential work, and plus the people in the office get a chance to build things and to see the results of their energies. And that's why landscape is so much more, it's you're much faster to get into the process to see it than what architecture is. I can say that for sure, most of the time. But I think that it's really about editing and simplifying and extracting what the essence of a space is. Water and fire are two of the primary elements of transformation in our natural habitat, of course. And you see here, this fire is represented by a photo that I took of our house in Malibu that was on fire and destroyed by the firestorms of '93. Fire is also represented symbolically in Astrid Preston's triptych about a pathway. When I was a student, though, I really found solace in the work of Cy Twombly. And I learned that I need not slavishly follow Euclidean geometry, that apparent randomness and apparent disorder are just as useful when designing. So now I'm going to take you to Sao Paulo. Here is here is our site plan for the Parque da Cidade in Sao Paulo. It's the current project du jour. This is the one that we're working on right now and wrangling with. And so I'm going to kind of take you through it. It's a process, right? It's not finished. It's not built. We're still working on it. You know, we're in the middle of it. And so, just to familiarize yourself with our site, this is the Pinheiros River, one of the major rivers in Sao Paulo. And then next to that, you have the train station here, the light rail. Here's the train station with the light rail running along parallel. And then you've also got the big Avenida Marginal Primeiros. It's a 6-lane highway between us and the river. And then there's the Avenue Nascos Unidas. And then also what you can see here, this is our site here, 20 acres. It's called, we've been calling it BMX since we got the project because this is where they make BMX racing bicycles. All of these sheds, that's where they make the bikes. But adjacent to this is a 9-acre site right here of our first project in Brazil. And you can see here the first 2 towers are up and part of the landscape is being installed. Garden of Eden is getting developed here, and then there'll be 2 more towers. So there's 4 towers facing the center of the project. And so I think that what I'm going to get to a little bit here at the beginning is some of the motivation behind some of our moves. Now, I'm just kind of setting the stage and kind of giving you what it is that we're working on. And so what I think that you can see here is that this Pinheiros River has been flanked by industrial complexes, like most of the river corridors in cities over the last century. And with the rapid growth and expansion of the city centers, these industrial sites are proving to be very useful and ripe for redevelopment, especially in a place like Sao Paulo, where, I mean, that place is just on fire in terms of things can't go up. I mean, when you come back to Los Angeles or Sao Paulo, you look out the window and you think that it's just a sleepy little village. Sao Paulo is like 100 times our downtown, and the buildings are much taller, and they just, when you think you're coming to down, and it just keeps going on as far as you can see. It's really unbelievable. So I think that here you can see our site. This is the with the buildings removed, and here you can see the 2 towers from our first project under construction here. And then you can also see here on this side, this is Isaac, which is another corporate tower. It's not a part of our project, and you can begin to see what it looks like there. And this you can see here is the you're really at one end of the site looking towards the west. Of course, you have to remember when you're in Brazil, the hot sun comes from the north. That's very disorienting for a landscape architect. But this is our 20-acre parcel. You're looking at it here, and you can see the trees, part of the Avenida Nascos Unidos. There's greenway on both sides of that avenue. Now, I want to get into a little bit of positioning of our project in terms of our, in terms of the world, I guess I should say, because a little bit about our client. First, our client is Odebrecht. And Odebrecht is the largest producer of energy in Latin America, and they're entering into, just now they're entering into the real estate market. They've hired Aflalo Gasparini, a multi-generational architecture firm in Sao Paulo, with whom we worked on that Rocha Vera project. That's how we were introduced to this one. Because they thought, you know, we're primed to create this green belt that connects all of these projects along. On our project, we have a large shopping center, out of which is coming a 20-story hotel, and glommed onto the side of that is the first of our corporate towers, first of four. 1, 2, 3, 4 corporate towers, and then what you have are 2 office towers and 2 residential towers, and then there's 3 one-story or 2-story restaurants or activity places like that. So that's what our project, that's what we've been given, that's the program, that's what we're developing. You can see here that there's a future avenida to be built along here, because they're just going through all of the existing, you know, industrial buildings. Our project was all of us together. This is after we started on it. We were invited to be a part of the Climate Positive program in association with the Clinton Foundation and the C40, which is the Climate Cities Leadership Group. It's a network of the world's megacities that are really taking action to reduce greenhouse emissions. It's really, we are one of 2 projects in Brazil to be part of this program, one of 18 in the whole world. You should see the list of countries. It's amazing. And the mission is to deal with the dual challenges of rapid urbanization and climate change. And they believe that they're, by getting these projects developing, that they're creating a model for other large-scale urban communities to create climate-positive mixed-use developments. That means that this development is going to have a negative carbon imprint. It's not going to be 0. It's going to go under. And so they're trying to create leadership in all of these 18 cities throughout the world to say, gosh, you guys, you can do it. You can do it. And that's amazing. And Arab is on our team, of course. Everybody hopefully knows who Arab is. Project, you know, they're worldwide, and they deal a lot in projects like this. And there are basically 3 components to getting to below 0, you know, and so that the buildings and the developments next to it, they start seeding these low carbon places next to ones that are doing too much, and it starts to change the system, trying to change the way that people are doing things. And there's 3 basic components to that. The first one is energy efficient buildings. Well, landscape architects, I'm sorry, hello, we don't have anything to do with the buildings and how efficient they are, but what we can do is we can help with the low carbon transportation, and we can help with water and wastewater management. So that's what we can do. So when we go to this diagram by Eric, you begin to see that it's just fascinating that the not only are you know, of course everybody's, you know, you've got to have the bicycle, you know, places for you to put the bicycle, but you've got to have changing rooms for people to get out of their sweaty biking costumes after they've gotten to the site. You've got to have bicycle circulation throughout the campus. But you've also got to do things like the real-time transit info and bike sharing programs, car sharing programs, intelligent parking system. All of this stuff goes into the low carbon transportation. That's part of our project. But where we really make a big dent is with the wastewater and water management. And you can see that what we've got programs going on our site here is with the permeable pavement and bioretention. That's you know, the permeable paving. The bioretention is really holding the water on site that is released during the storm through bioswales or through sumps. And then green roofs, and it's really quite amazing that we've got all the metrics, we're working on all the metrics of this stuff. So that's kind of the program. So what I want to talk to next is really our site and getting to the design part, which is what I'm sure all the students are really interested in. Okay, well, what's your big idea anyway? Right? That's the big idea. So what we've got here is this site with the program that I described to you. And it's really up to us to figure out how to make this place livable for people who work there, walk through it, be there. We can meet all of those other metrics. That's not really an issue. But how can we make this over and above and beyond, and more about Brazil and more about Sao Paulo than people in Sao Paulo even know? So that was our, that's part of what we're trying to do. And I think I've gone over with you the hotel and the corporate towers, the 4 corporate towers, 2 office towers, and 2 housing towers. So here, let's step back and let's go up in the satellite and take a look at Sao Paulo. And let's look at, this is where we start. This is what we have to look at first. And I have to say that, first of all, none of these projects are just me doing this by myself. I mean, this is a team of collaborating, intelligent people. Steve Billings, Robin Mitchell, Robin Carmichael. Robin Mitchell is here too. She's an artist. I really mostly want to acknowledge my office. Everybody in that office does the heavy lifting. I just get sick. I have to go to bed. Oh God. I'm recovering though. I can talk. So here's the big idea. Let's get in the satellite. Let's take a cruise up above and let's look what's really going on and what can we do about it. The densification of the city. There's no more parks. Less access to the rivers. Well, let's bring some component of the river into our project. So we start looking at the maps, and we look at the river Tietes, and we look at the Pinheiros River. You can see the yellow dot there just above the name. That's where our project is on the site. And we go, well, gosh, what is there about the history of rivers? And so, being a resourceful team, as we are, we look back in history. And we look back to 1913, and we can see here, along the Tietê River, are all of these oxbows that have been formed over time. And so what about the idea of this new young river with the floods coming through and the water coming out? They cut off, and here, let me show you this next image. They show you what an oxbow is, and we've got them here. So why can't we use this idea of these? You can see how the river's going through, and then you can imagine a huge storm, and they take a shortcut. And then the river continues along its shortcut path, but it leaves these oxbow lakes left over. So there was an idea that we could work with. And also the idea, of course, of the river trees, because that's something that we were familiar with. We had already done that on our Rochevera project, which I'll show you in a minute here. But first, I wanted to show you where the oxbows are in our project and how we've been able to work them into this idea. Because here you have the corporate towers, here you have the residential stuff, and here you have the green sward that's coming through with the 3 restaurants and coming through and then connecting to these other sites. Here's where we could really make a statement. And here's where there's an oxbow, a tilted plane, that's pointing towards the areas where people have seating. And here's the oxbow pond, which would be for bioretention, for bringing all of that rainwater. So then, here's a rendering. Now, I didn't have a lot to do with this rendering, but I think it's kind of gushing, isn't it? It's really, I mean, oh. So what we've done here, you can see the big gestures. I think I would certainly, if I had, and we will, have a chance to get greater input, especially in terms of the plant materials, what they look like. I don't want to be a wine but so here you see the the Oxbow River, the 3 commercial facilities. We built the models the old way in our shop. This is a way that everybody in the office can begin to understand what parts of the project they're working on and why we have to have a different kind of identity for each one of these corporate towers. They're so similar in a certain sense that what happens on the ground plane when people come past them, how are they going to know where they're going in? And why is this different than the next one? Well, that's where what you're doing and seeing and smelling and feeling and touching as you're moving through this campus is important. And especially, our experience from having worked on university campuses for 20 years before getting involved in any commercial real estate, we know what it takes to make a campus, what it takes for wayfinding, so people know where they are, and also so that they feel safe, that they know where they're going and they have security about where they are, because there's landmarks in the landscape. They're not going up into the towers and working there every day. These are for people, who are moving through the space. And so using water and treating water in different ways begins to identify spaces. And then here you see, this is really a nice image of the Oxford Lake for stormwater retention. And we're so excited to get this thing built, and then there's water to water. So, okay, so here's the question. How is this thing, what is it really going to look like? And what have we learned from the other big project that we worked on in Sao Paulo, right next door? And this is the Rochevera complex. It's 4 acres, not 20 acres. But the best thing about this project is they gave us 1 meter of soil on top of the parking garage for the whole site, anywhere we wanted it. We felt we died and gone to heaven. For landscape architects, I mean, you're lucky to get 18 inches, which is all we have at BMX. Here we've got 3 feet. And when they brought in all of this soil, Stephen and I went up the construction elevator, up to the very top floor. All this red earth, it's just so beautiful, really incredible. But we've used water here to help people to remember where they are. And the biggest story here is about the trees. The first idea that we had was really about bringing the river trees in and through the site. And here they are. And you can see from this photograph that they're probably 40 to 50 feet tall already, and it's been 3 years. These are the 3 sisters, 3 different varieties of Caesalpina trees that we found in our outings to all of the different nurseries during the progress of the project. So, and of course at nighttime then you can see the skyline trees from our project through the buildings. And this is the first diagram. Our first meeting with our Sao Paulo clients was on video conferencing. If you can imagine, you have to explain these ideas. So we gave them kind of 2 ideas, one of them being the big river trees, and then the other one developing a grid on the ground plane with pedestrian scale trees. And the architect says, Roberto Ablalo says, Pamela, I like both. So we basically use both of the 2 schemes. So here you can see the pedestrian scale trees from the Pinheiros River flowing through the site, coming into the center garden, and then back out. This is where most of the pedestrians enter. And they have an easy pathway to move on regular paving, or there's a pathway through the river trees. And in the center, what we've done, because can you believe these Brazilians, they've got parking below the whole thing. Why do they want to take their cars up onto the top of the structure? They want to take their cars, come up here and drive around under the porte cochere of each of these 4 buildings. What for? The BMX are not doing it. I mean, Parque Cidade used to do it. But, so they've got cars circulating around on the top deck. Then what we have to do is make a Garden of Eden in the center. And the Garden of Eden will go down to only 18 inches above the parking deck. And that's in the center. And then what we'll do is we'll make a berm around the outside, but only about 3.5 feet tall, so that when you stand up, you can see people. We don't want to do anything scary for people. We're going to have people hiding, in bushes and behind trees and stuff. So you've got to, we learn that from our campus work. People need to know where they're going. So there's a raised berm around it. We called it the Garden of Eden because then there are these ziggy-zaggy paths that lead you in. So you're going in, and the path isn't just radially oriented. It's kind of shifting around, and it takes you into this Garden of Eden. There's river trees and some of our grid trees in there as well. And then we have a whole series of follies. We had they never built it, but we're going to get it in a project someday. It's called a conference room outside, and it's where the water jets. You want to have a conference room? Okay, so you dial it in, plug it into whatever, and the water comes up, and it forms a room, a curtain of water coming from the ground going up. And then you go into it, and when the conference is over, you just turn the water off. We'll get it in a project one of these days. That's one of those, sub-ideas that won't get into another project. Okay, so here's getting into more of the kind of drawing that we will give to our design-build landscape architect in Sao Paulo, helping to give formalizing the organization of the garden. Some of the water features have been omitted, but you basically have water stairs. The architect had these as stairs coming up the building. We just said, why don't we just cover them with water and have water hoops? They can find a way in there. Why not? So they were sort of game for this. I don't think they have anything like this in Brazil with these river, because they talk about these other. Someone told us that they have helicopters flying through here, and they use it for the opening scene in one of those dramas on TV, to introduce the soap opera, fly through so that you see you're elected. It's Brazilian, but they needed a little bit of help to see what they are, because all of this is really inspired by Brazil. And I'm going to get to that in this talk. I could just move a little faster here. So here's Rochaberry. You can see the Garden of Eden. You can see the entry, river trees, and just imagine two more towers coming out the other side. And so this is what it's like to walk through the river trees. Now on paving, that's, you can either easily trip and fall. So you got to walk there, but you also have this kind of straightforward paving. And wonderful freesias, these incredible bromeliads, and here you see our small-scaled China trees with purple flowers, and the big Cesalpina trees, the three sisters there. And smooth paving to get you in and out. And this is the Garden of Eden. So yes, you can see the car is screened off, but in this one not quite so much, because the berms have to come up and go down to allow passageways through. And then at nighttime, look at the scale of these trees. Can you imagine? And they just said yes to everything that we wanted to do. Nobody's ever done that before. And then they said, we really like it. And Roberto Flalo came over to me when he recognized these as Cesalpina trees. He said, oh, Cesalpina, the Palfeo tree. It's the founding tree. It's what our country is named after, Brazil, because when you cut the bark, this red sap oozes out. And it's like a brazier, of coals burning. And that's how Brazil got their name, was from these native trees. So many beautiful, I go, yeah, they're trees. They're working just fine. So let's get into the paving and some of the other aspects. Our low albedo. We've got everything in line with our climate positive group there, and they're always writing to us and asking us for new suggestions. But what I'm talking about here on this image is really the permeable paving, the bike path along the Nascos Unidos, and then also connecting our farmers market with our park, connecting on. But then this is really complicated through here because it's the backside of the office towers, and it's the main circulation route for people going to the shopping center, to the hotel, and connecting to the other buildings. So this has to be really spectacular. And so here, again, we only have 18 inches, 1.5 meters. We don't have the full 3 feet. So we have to be inventive. So we figure, okay, well let's make these series of quincunx. Quincunx comes from the word 5, and it means 5 trees that are placed, as you can see here, with their canopies intertwined and really densely planted. So we were creating these kind of rafts of quincunx that were raised platforms. 3 of them are raised and 3 of them are flush. And I'll show you what we've done with the flush ones. But here it shows you how you can get that 3 meters. Here's 18 inches. And it brings you up to a decomposed granite, almost like a commuter race with these beautiful trees like this in Boston, where the canopies of the trees are so tight together that they really, what we've actually used are each one of these quincunx is part of the wind protection plan because they come between the 4 towers. There's one right there where the water is, the eminent direction of the wind is flowing in off of the river. So here's then, we had to come up with another solution that would still allow people to pass through as opposed to having to go up 2 steps, 3 steps, to go up to the next level. We had to develop a kind of planter system that would work on structure and give us more and keep big enough that could give roots for those trees to grow. So here is here's the quincunx inspiration here for the planters from, of course, right here at the Broad Art Center, the Richard Serra piece. Why can't we make our planters out of 410 steel? You know, Richard Serra could do it at, you know, in Washington and in Bilbao, and at one of our clients' houses in Brentwood, a Richard Serra piece put into the garden. So let's figure it out. Let's figure out a way to build these. And we can put them, we can have them, fabricate them. They're not going to be an issue at all. And then this is part of the rendering showing how it works. And then here's how it really works, showing in wayfinding. Each quincunx has a flowering tree that's different with some kind of really beautiful red, lavender, cerise, plum color. So you have these different colors of quincunx marching the full length of these 4 office towers. And then here you can see our Oxbow bank and the Oxbow lake, and then, you know, the raised restaurant. So this is pretty. This is, you know, in other words, we didn't have to invent everything from the beginning, but we did have to. We have to mine our archives. Everything. That's what you do. Mine the archives. What are we doing that other project? Let's go see if we can get it in here. So this is what we learned in our commercial campuses from the Colorado Center that we worked on right here in Santa Monica. This is a 15-acre site. I don't remember exactly, but it's a 15-acre site, let's just call it that. And so there's 5 different buildings. But what we did was to create this pedestrian circulation that has all these little eddies so that you know where you're going and you know where you're moving, but there's places to stop along the way and it's friendly. And then the idea for the plinth, for the quincunx, came from this plinth here that we had to work with, a raised area that's kind of sequestered a little bit off the pedestrian circulation, and you can sit and enjoy a cup of coffee or sit next to the fountain. It's a Ron Cooper picture. And then we learned about using the trees as a means of wayfinding from our work at Colorado Center. All of these palm trees were planted around the perimeter of the site, and we boxed them up and moved them and put them on center with this walkway. All of the walkways into the center are now really direct and straight away, so pedestrians off of the sidewalk would be invited in. Because before, you know, it was closed off like this. You didn't know that you could go in there. But we opened it up. People come in here and look at this. And then they find their way by looking at all of these juicy materials that are actually really drought tolerant and can instruct people at any kind of a graphic combination that you want. This is actually taking us from off structure to on structure. There's a pool underneath here. And the pool is sheltered by these plants. People swimming there don't really know it, but who cares? So anyway, people moving through the space, lots of, you know, rich colors, but then there's also a very subtle palette of, you know, festuca, glauca, and elliptotrichum, jacaranda trees, and senecio, and all these beautiful grays and blues and flowing, moving grasses that give color and texture and movement. It makes me happy to do this. I like to go back there and look at it. I like going there for lunch. So here we are. Now we're into the plant material note. So we're going to take a look at, and this is the last category, so we're almost, oh, I got another 15 minutes. actually, I think what I'd like to do is make sure that there's time for students to ask questions and have a dialogue. So I think that's what really makes, you can grill me afterwards. And I'm not going to tell any lies. I promise. Okay, so this diagram is going over the nature of the river trees through our esplanade and also through our off-structure permeable area. And then here you can see the quincunx coming through. But now we've got the next task, and that is how to direct our local landscape architects in terms of kind of species and plant materials and quantities, and to learn their kind of sizing. Here we have 1 gallon and 5 gallons, and we have little plugs, and we have 24. They don't have any of that down there. So that's why our previous project with Rochevera, we had all this information, having visited all of these nurseries, had to get snake boots to go out there in the country and go past. You go, what are those things over there? They were these like red teepees, this big, they're termite mounds. I mean, you can't believe it's so wild out there. I mean, this place is so big and dense as the city is. The wilderness is just, I mean, knock your socks off. So, okay, so here we're talking about the kinds of plant materials and what we're using on the ground plane. This doesn't show the canopy trees except for the quincunx, and here you can see the color coding for those. And each one of these corporate centers, after we've given the space away to bicycles and taxi parking and backup and turnarounds and, you know, fire hammerheads. Oh, we've got a lot of that stuff in here. So we had to figure out how we would be able to turn this into a distinctive, clear way of describing what the palette was for each of these areas. And then, of course, then there's the park, the big trees. So this was a useful tool, good diagram, to show us what we were doing. Well, when in Brazil, do as the Brazilians. And who but Roberto Burle Marx would serve as inspiration. Oh my God, it was such an eye-opener. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but here you see Burle Marx's graphics and his ability to really just take whimsy and let things just flow. Look at these shapes of these trees. He did the top of many buildings. He's so here, Burle Marx. Let's keep going. This is the fun part. This is in Rio. Of course, you can recognize that mountain. But look at the Roia with some kind of a yellow. I don't know what that is. It's too blurry. Let's go on. So what is interesting here? Again, you can see Caesalpina trees. You know, this native Brazilian flora, these incredible lotus, water lily plants, building on pilotis or, you know, overlook over this water. It's just so beautiful. It's so luscious. I just want to go in there. So we've got the restaurant building up on pilotis with its legs in the water. And here you see the sterculia trees, red trees, just so beautiful. Philodendrons and big masses of plant materials that really will keep people entertained. This is a Roberto Burle Marx, xeriscape on top of a bank building. Can you believe this? This is the extent of the plant materials. This is the existing roof surface, and look what he's done with that with a can or two of paint. Pretty wonderful. But Brazil is like that. Everywhere you're walking in the streets, it's like this. And this, kind of granite sets of paving. They've got the labor to make this happen. And look at this. Can you believe this? Tufa China, but then you've got a topiary, Cupressus, and you've got a box. No, this is Duranta Repenspiragon. And yeah, it's just, these mixtures of things. Look at what they do with the paving. It just, everything is coming in such a kind of joyful expanse. This is just a store. But they've got tile. They've got such color and vibrancy in their life. And having been raised on a kind of Japanese aesthetic and modernism, this to me is a whole new ballpark completely. But, you know, with some restraint. Not too much, enough to make it work. We had to go to Burley Marx's house in Rio. And this was such an epiphany to be able to see all of his materials that he's collected from all over the place, juxtaposing the texture, you know, in color of an agave with a Parva sensiflora next to a Dracaena, and then you've got aloes. You know, you just get in there and work with your eyes and what you like and make it sing. He used to collect pieces of buildings that were being dismantled and he'd bring them home and set them up. Okay, let's make a fountain out of that. He was just very kind of open-ended and gregarious, I think, in his way and his approach to landscape. Wonderful ferns and, of course, all of the bromeliads and tillandsias. Incredible things. Yes, exactly. We had a discussion this morning about what these were. This is alocasia here, and this is what they eat koi in Hawaii. It's a taro root. And this is these water lilies that Joseph Paxton discovered, and he put his daughter on one in that, you know, he used the structure of this water lily to design the Crystal Palace. And that was from Brazil. And people were so interested in importing materials and what they could learn from them. And here's these more bromeliads growing out of the side of the rock, and you've got equisetum coming out. Just this, the abundance. And yet it does have some kind of order. It's not brown water. This is duckweed. This is a little plant that's growing on the surface of the pond. Look at this incredible Bismarckia palm and Maresia bromeliads, and then a little cactus stuck in here. So we've learned a great deal. We've learned a great deal from Burley Marx, and yet we had to bring in important knowledge that we have used on some of our other projects, and mostly in terms of planting. This project is in Beverly Hills, and it's on Civic Center Drive. It's a redo of 2 commercial buildings, and it was really pretty bad. I mean, really bad in terms of, you know, the 60s and not having much life about it. So working with Joey Shimoda, the architect, we were able to really develop a good, strong program that the client approved of. And what we wanted to do was to use masses of trees here. But what we're showing here is what we're using on our projects in Brazil, is that kind of how we get to the area where we can have enough soil to plant big materials. So you come in, and first of all, you have to wrap these existing beams with carbon fiber epoxy reinforcing, and then you come in with this structural foam, and then on top of that you get your really good topsoil that has enough inert material so it won't collapse over time. It's complicated, these recipes. It is complicated, but it's fun, you know, because you know you're going somewhere. It's not like you're just going to be stuck in the mud. You know? So here is showing how you enter this. Here's Complex 1, Complex 2, and here's Civic Center Drive. And, you know, you come up the steps, nice, wide, generous opening. You come past these walls that have benches as a part of it. It squeezes down a little bit. You know right where entry 1 and entry 2 are. You see right where you're going. Then you know where you are. So you can come back out and enjoy this little garden in here and this little one in here. So it's kind of it's a small project, but I think it's really beautiful. And here's what it looks like, with Joey Shimoda taking these big ocean liner red granite buildings and putting these sort of visors on the building. And then here you are coming up into the center with the Palo Verde trees. We just used one tree type. And then we've got these big sweeps of blue materials, opposite color of yellow, these purple and blue, and tucreum, lavender, and salvia, alum chicory, and bucophyllum. And then we throw in a few reds here and there if we get a chance. And so you can see how you get this incredible view, and you know where you are, you know what you're looking for. Big sweeps of color. it makes the world of difference to have that aesthetic integration of the architecture and the landscape. And you can tell when you have good projects, because the architect and the landscape architect really appreciate what each other is doing. The worst projects are ones when everybody's fighting. Isn't that weird? You know, you do have projects that, you know, are difficult, but we like the ones that are really great. And so, you know, to conclude my talk, I'm going to just show you one other project here in Los Angeles that we learned from, after I show you planting palettes for Parque da Cidade and the way in which we communicate with our local landscape architect is, this is just one portion of a drawing that's quite big, of just about half of the site. But what it does is it's like a recipe. It's showing what plant materials are going where and what the spacing is on those materials. Here's a quincunx right here. And then you can see the office tower is right here. And you can see that here is the trucks coming in and going out and dropping off. You have to have places for the taxis to wait. Here you can see, I mean, it's very complex, and you've really got to put a lot into a little amount of space to really get some kind of traction. And this is the way in which we do that. And then we get into the kinds of plant materials that we'll be using on these projects. Now, this is a bromeliad. It's actually a variegated pineapple. And look at the massing of that material. It's so delicate beneath it. It's spines on the edges. And then we get these dracaenas, and look at the method by which they ball and burlap these things. This poor thing without feet. They're really amputated, but they're going to soon be in a home. This is a licuala, which is an amazing palm that we use because of its incredible chartreuse color and the striations. It feels like a pleated linen skirt, doesn't it? Yeah. And then the dragon tree, the Dracaena draco, we all know what those are. We have those here. The Bismarckia palm, gray. And then here you've got these wonderful Cirrus cactus, and you've got these, these things right here. This is called mother-in-law tongue, or parmesan. Yeah, you won't forget that name. Or how about this? This is like a Giotto angel without feet. They all had skirts coming down. None of them. They were all floating in the sky in Giotto's pre-Renaissance drawings. Well, that's what these things remind me of. Because they don't have any, there's no feet showing, there's no roots. This is the Bocarnia, wonderful plant material. And it's Cirrus cactus. We go out and look for this stuff. This is Pandanus. Pandanus. Stephanie's probably smiling right now because it's got a wonderful floral leaf patterning that is just incredible to look at. And then you've got, of course, topiary puxus. Yeah, I mean, what a range of materials. And then we go out to the body snatching out at the nurseries. This is how they do that. They're not growing these trees in containers and getting them big. They just come to the nursery and pull them up when they're needed and bring them to the site and plant them. And that's how they do it in Brazil. This is our collection of Cecilina trees going to Rochevera. But you can see that, a certain number of them are not going to make it, but place them. It's really quite wonderful. And so now we're going to end with the civic next to close by to the Civic Center in Century City is one of our more recent projects with the architect Robert Stern, who we've also worked with, who's designed the new UCLA Santa Monica Hospital in Santa Monica. And they asked us to work with them on this project. It's a high-rise condominium tower in Century City called the Century. And when the New Yorkers came out and related, and they were, asking questions about, what's all of this in the front. Where's the lawn? I said, well, wait a minute, this is California. This is California. And here's where we have all of these wonderful sages, and Muhlenbergia capillaris turns red in the fall, and olive trees, and of course we have palm trees that are native here. So what we've done is to take this incredible mix. There's a jogging path that goes around the front and then back into the back area, and it's we said, this is California, and they just said, oh. And there it is. We didn't have to switch it out to lawn. I was so relieved. So it's scruffy, but we're a little scruffy, you know, and that's okay. It's beautiful. It has movement, color, and then in the back where the entertainment, where we have, you know, all the program elements for people who live there, like outdoor fireplaces and outdoor kitchens, and a place to put up a tent and play bocce ball or to play, you know, croquet and badminton. Yeah, there is a lot. If it's useful, you know, if it's useful, we'll go along with it. But whenever we can, we really try to ditch the lawn as much as we can. So here's looking back at the tower. So the big idea here is really to create this axis. And Stern liked this a lot, of course. But what he really liked was that we took our inspiration from Lutyens, from Marsh Court. He and Gertrude Jekyll working on this wonderful thing, and I'd like to think that Lutyens was inspired by the step-wells of Onmagad. So we use that idea here for this water feature, which I'm very thrilled with how this has worked out, because it's really, it gives a place to go to. And I have only one last thing to say, and that is that it takes a tremendous amount of effort and energy to make something look like it's effortless. So that's the end. Thank you, and I'd like some questions. Yeah, Robin. That I have somebody here.
Does it rain a lot?
Yeah, there's a big rainy season. It's temporary.
So do they have to irrigate the gardens, or?
You still have to irrigate in the dry season. Somebody, yeah, okay, good. You must have some questions, because I've sort of glossed over a lot of stuff. Oh, and I know what your name is.
Yeah. What's a green roof?
And that's Michael Bayer, right?
No,
Oh, no. I got a little confused. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What's a green roof that you noticed, you mentioned at the beginning of your project? Green roof?
Yeah, green roofs. Well, green roofs are extensive and intensive. If it's intensive, it means that you're walking on it and that you need to be able to support traffic. If it's extensive, it means that you don't have people walking on it, and you can do whatever you want. Plant lots of succulents. We don't think that they're very good here in Los Angeles because they require such irrigation and such maintenance. All of them that I've seen are less than desirable. I think it's, I don't know, I could probably say that about green walls, although we just recently installed one over on Crescent Drive for AKA, which is this temporary, anyway, it's a building complex just north of Wilshire, but I have to say they're pretty seductive. And as long as you've got the client committed to the maintenance and to the, if they're going to build it properly, they're beautiful. When we've had them recently submitted, I'm on the ARB in Santa Monica, and we had a big project come through that had a green wall in it. My first question was, does the owner know what the cost of this is? And are they agreeing to maintain it? You know, because why put something in that's just going to keep it up? You know, really. Did I answer your question about green roofs?
Yeah, thank you.
No. Okay. Good. Yes.
My question was on maintenance.
Pardon?
On
you needed me to repeat that, talking about maintenance for projects in foreign countries. We're working on a couple of embassies with more Ruby Udell, and the GSA has, they have their own crews who maintain these. In places like Brazil, they get us whether they want us or not. We go back to Rochevera and we write up notes. We take lots of photographs and we pinpoint, please fix this. You've got dead trees, you've got this over here, and we go in and we take a picture of every little thing that we would love them to fix. That's part of our wish list, But it takes tenacity. You can't just give up. It's like, when you make a garden, it's like having a baby. And you've got to take care of it until you can send it off to college, and even then you still got to be paying for it. It's true. It's true. Ask Brian here. He knows.
So just to follow up on that maintenance question.
Yeah.
Do you have a formalized, maybe more formalized way of communicating maintenance? Maybe manual or something that would then tell them that grass is actually fertilized?
Well, first of all, you have to have the client pay you to do a maintenance manual. Our maintenance manual for Colorado Center is like this. And you know what? They're still asking us back now. We've been through 2 or 3 owners now. They're still because we stick like glue. They can't shake us off their shirt. We're like glue on them because we care about it. It's right in our neighborhood. It's important. And they like it. So all of a sudden, they've got a new name for their center. It's back to Colorado Center after being Yahoo and something else. What did before that? Yeah, I don't know. So they've got new signs up on everything. They said, oh my gosh, they call us, they come in, we help them fix it. And we're delighted. We're absolutely delighted because that's what it takes to keep a project looking good. So, yeah, you have to be in it for the long haul. Yeah.
I was wondering, I'm not too familiar if there are too many international projects to confirm, but is there a high learning curve with cultural students in terms of going to Brazil and dealing with cultural issues you've had complicated? And you could elaborate.
Oh, the culture. You like all those faux pas, don't you? Well, when you're telling the cab driver to stop in the favelas on the way from the airport to the garden center because you want to take pictures. That is a big faux pas. You do not do that. You can't stop. You got to keep going. No, the faux pas. You really do need to follow your political agenda, have a good understanding of what's going on in the country, what Dilma is up to, what the political powers are about, where the power players live, where they work, what they see, what they do. We stay in the Jardiniere area, and we can go around. We can see how these people live and what they're doing and how they live. It's a combination of reading about the city as much as you can. The first thing we do, we don't allow ourselves to get jet lagged. We sleep on the plane and we make sure that we get out and we get on their time schedule immediately. Walk and go to the museums, go to Burley Marks. We always have. Last trip we were able to go to Brasilia. Oh my goodness, if you haven't been there, any of you architects, eat your heart out. It's just so, what an incredible, combination of brilliant civil engineering, and I'm telling you, that laid the groundwork for Oscar Niemeyer. It's just so much to learn. And that's how you immerse yourself in a culture. You go to the bookstores, you go shopping, you figure out what they're eating, and you eat the same thing. You get your favorite restaurants, and you just, you really have to it's total immersion. And that's how the learning comes. You can't be afraid. And even though I don't speak Portuguese, I have pretty good Spanish. Early, just eat my way along with that, but they appreciate that you're learning something. So I don't know if that answers the question or not. It's difficult, but yes, there's a lot of things. Maybe Steve wants to add a few things about cultural differences.
Bring an interpreter, because Pamela's Spanish is not so good.
Any other questions? question. Yes, Brian.
What are the sort of the key influences that you think that you picked up whilst you were in Brazil? And were you able to sort of bring them back and establish them or interpret them here in Los Angeles?
Well, I'd say that the greatest thing that I learned really was to just go for it. Don't be timid. I had to tell one client one time, he was coming to the project, and all he wanted was lawn. I want lawn. I want lawn everywhere. And I'd have to fight with him using a hose, delineating what was lawn and what was planting. And I kept moving it this way, and he kept moving it that way. And so they put the lawn in while the house was still under construction in order to make it, clean, so you didn't have mud all over the place. So, and that's rug carpet, wore out real fast. So all of a sudden, there was a birthday party happening, and let's get it finished, all the landscape right now. Well, I had this little trick card up my sleeve, and this is my chance to pull it out. And so what I did was, instead of lawn, we used this beach sand, pink and fluffy and so sexy. I can't tell you. We called it Marilyn Monroe sand. It comes from the Pomo, and it's got these softer angles on each grain of the sand so that it feels, it's just like nothing else you've ever seen. So instead of lawn, guess what? The birthday party was going to be starting. The men were coming in with 15-gallon buckets with duct tape over the holes at the bottom, carrying this Marilyn Monroe sand and taking it and dumping it. Because I had done all the other rest of the planning, and we just, I'm sure he probably thought it was going to be lawn. But by the time that he came, well, because he would come to me, what are you going to do out here now? What are you going to do out here now? And I actually told him one time, and I was just joking. I said, could you just put a paper bag over your head when you come and just walk by? Let me finish, and then if you don't like it, we'll change it. And he just got a big smile on his face, and he walked away. So I was kind of being very daredevil. I had to have a little bit of chutzpah. And so those guys were dumping it. Hurry up! Hurry up, tearing them. I had my hat down over my head, and I was like this. I wasn't going to look up. I was not going to look up. And then pretty soon I got a little bucket of the sand. And I kind of walked over to him and I said, touch this. Isn't this great? And he looked up, he says, yeah. It was okay, because it had to be done. The party was starting, and the guys were dumping their last bucket. So, I worked for this client for maybe 15 years or so. I've never received a compliment from them once. Never once. But when this job was finished, he actually called me up and said something, complimentary. Is to really just go for what I think is really going to work. Yes, Michael.
Barnabas is such a dominant figure in Brazil. Did he inspire a whole new generation to follow him, or perhaps to rebel and try something last year?
That's a really good question. From what I've seen of the landscape, I'm not that, I don't know if they've discovered it. It seems like they've always been trying to imitate the West, in a way. And that's how we were really Mavericks, was that we were just saying, hey, this is early Mars. Look at this. Look at what we can do with those ideas, So I think we were there at the right time, in the right place. That's a good question. Any other? Yes.
I'm curious if you can site plan.
We were given the layout of the site. They have certain kind of pro forma economically, how many floors in the office towers, how many square feet. They have a lot of restrictions from the city and things like that. Anything that we would want to do with the ground plane, it was a real negotiation back and forth. It always is, I think. But no, we couldn't move and shift the buildings around, not at that point. Yeah, but that was wishful thinking. Yeah, another question, good.
Well, actually, I wanted to make a comment. I wanted to thank you for sharing your insight with this particular river concept coming through the complex and the Oxbow Lake. Because I grew up near the Mississippi River and I understand what those are all about. And that's where I'm going to further shedding light on that. But it also is delineating the age of the river.
Yes.
So as the river takes those shortcuts that you described, it becomes the distance between 2 points in a straight line. So the younger the river, the more it has.
Interesting. Yeah, like all of those things are revealed if we just open our eyes to them. Any other questions? Okay, we're done.